Hi, everyone. The Partial Prophet here. Thanks for tuning in. So, I wanted to remind you that we know in part and we prophesy in part, and then when Jesus comes, we will see fully. Okay, so this video is 2021, Year of the Beast from the Sea. Okay, so I get this idea about 21 from the patterns that we see from the Jewish holidays of Passover and Sukkot. Okay, so what they are is Passover and Sukkot are two week long Jewish holidays. One of them's in the spring, that's Passover, and one in the fall, which is Sukkot. And both of these holidays, there's some similar patterns between these two holidays, and one of them is they both last. They're both on the dates in the Jewish month of the 15th to the 21st in their um, particular months, okay? And then they'll have an 8-day, which is on the 22nd, okay? Passover is a little different. I mean, it has an 8-day, but they also count um, the Omer to the 50th day, and they consider and that takes them to Shavuot, which is the similar to the Pentecost Christian holiday. And they actually consider that a type of 8-day too. Okay. Um, and so what we have here is so we could see that the 21st date can be considered the 7th day, and the 22nd day can be considered the 8th day. Okay. So that's where I'm getting this pattern here. Okay. For this video. Okay. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay. And so, yeah, we're going to focus on the 21st and the 22nd. The 21st being the 7th day and the 22nd being the 8th day. Okay, so what if day 6, which matches up with the 20th, connects to the year 2020? What if day 7 connects to the year 2021? And what if day 8 connects to 2022? Okay. And so if we're in the last days, it is possible that we are seeing this pattern live out in the calendar. Okay. And it could give us clues as to when to expect the Messiah. Okay. And so actually it's kind of interesting. When I was first doing this video, I was just kind of focusing on you know the idea of 2020 and 2021. Wait, I'm going to go back to this slide. Well, I was actually focused on day 7 and day 8, 2021 and 2022, but I realized that there was a lot of patterns in 2020 that really connected to the concept of day 6. Okay. And so we'll talk about that. And so that's why I can really look at 2022 being considered the 8th day because we've seen pattern fulfillments in 2020 kind of matching the patterns of day 6 and 2021 matching the patterns of day 7. Okay. And so I already did one video about 2021 and talked about how it was the year of the two witnesses. Okay. And so what I believe is the two witnesses are Trump and Netanyahu. Okay. Because I talked about with 2020, we had, that connects to our eyes. Okay. 2020 vision. Okay. And then so two eyes would connect to the two witnesses. Okay. And so we read about the two witnesses in Revelation 11. And I will grant authority to my two witnesses, and they will prophesy for 1260 days, clothed in sackcloth. These are the two olive trees and the two lampstands that stand before the Lord of the earth. Okay. So what we have is 1260 days of the two witnesses. Okay. And And so there's a connection to um, Revelation 12:6 also with these 1260 days. Okay, so we read in Revelation 12:5, it said, "And she gave birth to a son, a male, who was to rule all the nations with a rod of iron, and her child was caught up to God and to his throne." Revelation 12:6 says, "Then the woman fled into the wilderness, where she had a place prepared by God, so that so that there she would be nourished for 1260 days." Okay. So so what I was thinking is, so we always look at this verse, Revelation 12:5, thinking that the birth of this child is the Messiah. Okay, but what if um the the male that is to rule all the nations with a rod of iron, what if that is President Trump or former President Trump? Okay. And so I kind of think when it says her child was caught up to God and to his throne, that one, I think it partly relates to how he was wanting to do some things in Israel, like move the embassy to Jerusalem, and then he made these peace deals, quote unquote peace deals. Um, and so I think it could connect to that, but also I think there's a connection that um, we're gonna see Trump really try to sit in the throne of the Messiah. Okay. I think when he returns, I mean, we've already really seen messianic overtones from him and from his speech and the way people, uh, his followers, kind of worship him and make him out to be a messiah, a messianic figure. Um, and then Trump always latches on to what these false prophets that surround him say about him, like they call them Cyrus. Okay. Um, and so I think, we're going to see a little bit more of the fulfillment of this verse when he returns, um, when God allows him to return. Okay. Um, okay. And so it talks about the woman fleeing into the wilderness for 1,260 days. One of the things that's important to keep in mind is the Israelites wandered in the wilderness with Moses and Aaron. So there's a connection. You could kind of make a parallel with the two witnesses with Moses and Aaron, okay, leading the Israelites in the wilderness, okay. Um, the Another thing too was the woman in the wilderness was fed manna in the wilderness, and so I'm not really sure about this because, like I said, I'm the partial prophet. But one thought I had with the manna is that it could be a prophetic shadow picture of where, okay, Trump feeds his people manna, which is not true bread. Okay, because remember when Jesus um, was here, he said, "I am the bread of life." Okay, and he actually makes a comparison to how he's the true bread that comes out of heaven, and compares it to the manna that was fed in the wilderness to the Israelites. Okay. Um, so obviously we want the bread of life, not the manna. Okay. Um, and um, so that kind of connects to the woman in the wilderness. Okay. Um, and the woman in prophecy would connect a lot to the Christian church. Okay. So I think with the 1260 days, okay, I make a connection to, there's a connection to um 12:6. Okay, so remember, so we're seeing like the 1260 days connects to Revelation 12:6, which connects to December 6th. In 2017, remember that was when US President Trump announced the United States recognition of Jerusalem as the capital of Israel and ordered the planning of the relocation of the U.S. Embassy in Israel from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. Okay, that's from Wikipedia. So very interesting that happened on 12/6. Okay. And I also think that 1260, you could parse that out to be 666, which also connects to the six quote unquote peace deals of President Trump. Okay. So I think there's some prophetic shadows in these numbers um, that, like, uh, involve kind of like, how there's that expression about rightly dividing the word. Um, so, I mean, I could be wrong, but is it possible that I'm making some correct connections with the mark of the beast and the 1260 and the President Trump making his announcement on 12/6? Okay. So those are my thoughts on that. Um so okay, and so the other thought that I had is, okay, so what if day 6 happened on 2020? Okay. Um And so, okay, so wrote, everyone is looking for the mark of the beast. Okay, they are. It's, I mean, not everyone, but a lot of people, especially people that are interested in Bible prophecy, talk a lot about the mark of the beast, and they're looking for the mark of the beast. And a lot of people have their own theories about what it is. But I was wondering, what if the mark of the beast is related to the peace, quote unquote, peace deals of Trump? Okay, one of the things that I'm thinking is that Trump is the sixth king. Okay. Um, and okay, so then let's read this verse in Revelation 13. Okay, that's about the mark of the beast. And it says, and he causes all, the small and the great, and the rich and the poor, and the free men and the slaves, to be given a mark on their right hand or on their forehead, and he provides that no one will be able to buy or sell except the one who has the mark, either the name of the beast or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him who has understanding calculate the number of the beast. For the number is that of a man, and his number is 666. Okay. Um, so see right here, I connect 666 with the 1260 days with 12/6/2017. And then on a slide coming up, I believe I connected to the six peace, quote unquote, peace deals of Trump. Okay, so I really think that Trump is the beast from the earth. Okay, this is the passage we're reading in Revelation 13. A lot of prophecy, they really just talk about the Antichrist, and they don't recognize that there's two beasts. Okay, in Revelation 13, there's the beast from the sea and the beast from the earth. Okay, and so what I believe is possible is that Biden is the beast from the sea, and then maybe a connection to Obama, but also maybe Obama is the dragon. Okay, there's also a dragon, and that I believe that Trump could be the beast from the earth. Okay, um, and so what's interesting about this passage is, okay, so I highlighted um, the word right. Okay, so the mark is either given on the right hand or on their forehead, and so I think that's interesting because I kind of think there's a connection to the fact that Trump leans to the right politically. Okay, you know the um, he's on the right. He's a Republican, which is considered on the right. Okay. What I think is interesting too is you see a lot of Trump followers wearing MAGA hats. Okay, that sit on their forehead. Okay, so I think that's kind of interesting. And then this passage where it says no one will be able to buy and sell. To me, that's interesting because there's a connection to, like, the money changers in the temple. The story of Babylon is Babylon is definitely a economic system. Um, buying and selling. Is listed in Revelation 17 and 18 when it's talking about Babylon. Okay. Um, and then what I think is very interesting too is that um, okay, so I've seen this coming true is that what you have is Trump has this power that he is just with the word is able to like he either supports Republican candidates or he doesn't support Republican candidates. Like I just read another article today um, where, um, I don't remember the guy's name, but he was running for, um, like I think probably a representative. Um, he was one of the Republican candidates, and he wasn't willing to kind of support Trump in his uh, false teaching about the election, the 2020 election. Okay, so then what happened is that uh, Trump jumped in and is no longer supporting this candidate. Okay, um, so that happened just recently. Okay, and we see where Trump is really, there's a lot of candidates that are really kind of like riding on Trump's coattails. Okay. And so Trump has a lot of power um, to, either support a candidate or not support a candidate. Okay. Because of he has a lot of followers. Okay. Um, and we also saw that with Liz Cheney, because remember how they Liz Cheney lost. She was in some position of leadership. She's still the representative of her state, but she had a leadership position, and because she wasn't willing to stand up to Trump and say, and repeat the lie that the election was stolen, she actually, you know, did a lot against Trump. Um, and I mean, I really like her. I think she's doing some good stuff. She's on the January 6th commission. She says a lot of things to bring out, um, to expose the lies of Trump in the election. Okay. But she got in trouble for that. Okay. She lost one of her positions of leadership that she had. Um, okay. And so when we talk about the seven kings or the eight kings, I see a connection to Daniel's statue. I've talked about this in several of my videos. Okay. Um, I think it's possible that Netanyahu is the head of gold, Reagan, Bush 1 and Bush 2 are the arms and breast of silver. Obama is the um, what is it? It connects to the bronze, um, and then the legs, the what is it? The stomach and thighs of bronze. Um, and so I think we got Obama in the belly of the beast, basically. And then Bill Clinton could be one of the thighs. Joe Biden, or maybe John Kerry, although maybe more Joe Biden. I'm not really sure. Um, I'm a little hazy about how that part works out. I think, and then it talks about legs of iron, which I definitely think relate to Trump on the on the right leg, and then on the left leg we could have BLM, um, because you could see a connection with iron and destruction with them too. Okay. Um, and so what I believe is that Trump is the sixth king, Biden is the seventh king, and then is Trump the eighth king that returns? That's what I'm wondering. Okay, and then maybe the Messiah is also considered an eighth king. Because when we read this, it says, okay, so in Revelation 17, okay, this is where we read about this. Here's the mind which has wisdom. The seven heads are seven mountains on which the woman sits, and they are seven kings. Five have fallen, one is, and the other has not yet come, and when he comes, he must remain a little while. The beast which was and is not is himself also an eighth, and is of the seven, and he goes to destruction. Okay, so five have fallen. Reagan, Bush, Clinton, Bush, Obama are no longer in power, right? Okay. Um, or you could say the fifth has fallen. And then it says, um, one is. Um, so it's almost like these verses were kind of written for the time frame of Trump. Okay, although what's kind of interesting is that it's like he still hasn't gone away even during this time of Biden. Okay, And then it says the other has not yet come. Well, that's no longer true because now he has come. Biden has come. And when he comes, he must remain a little while. Okay, so for me, that's exciting to think that Biden might only be around for a little while. Okay, so kind of interesting. And then what I think is interesting too is that the context of these verses is Babylon. Okay, so like I said, I think there's a connection with Trump and Babylon. Um, haven't totally figured it out. Like, is the woman riding on the beast? Is the woman Biden and the beast Trump? Um, or vice versa. I'm not completely sure how those prophetic shadows in Revelation 17 and 18 work out. Because every time I read it, I kind of see the exact opposite of what I read before. And so it's not completely clear to me. But sometimes I think that Biden is kind of matches some of the prophetic shadows of the some women in scripture, because I'm thinking like Vashti in the book of Esther, who's a woman, does not come on the seventh day. Okay, I think that could be a connection to Biden. Okay. Um, and what I really think is that on the seventh day, so Vashti is supposed to come with her royal crown. Okay. And so actually it's possible that Vashti could be America. Okay. Um, and but it's on the seventh day she doesn't come, and so that connects to this, Biden being the seventh king. And so what I really think is that America's not willing to come with her military power to help Ukraine, is what we're seeing um, on the seventh day. Okay. Um, so that's one example. Um, okay. So then what we saw in 2020, that it was the year of the peace deals. Okay. Most of them were announced in 2020. We did have one. The sixth one was announced in 2021 on February 1st. Okay. So January 28th was when President Trump announced his deal of the century. August 13th in 2020 was the peace deal, the quote unquote peace deal with UAE. September 11th was the quote unquote peace deal with Bahrain. September 15th, they actually, UAE and Bahrain were actually in Washington doing these quote unquote peace deal signings. It was a big ceremony. October 23rd was the quote unquote peace deal with Sudan. December 10th was the quote unquote peace deal with Morocco, and February 1st was the quote unquote peace deal with Kosovo. What was very interesting is that February 1st, okay, so if you're wondering where the 1260 days was, here's a potential fulfillment, is that 1260 days after August 21st leads us to the peace deal with Kosovo. Okay. So, what's very interesting to me is that if you remember this, August 21st, 2017 was the Great American Solar Eclipse. Okay. So, was that a sign from God, for us to keep an eye on? I definitely think so. I mean, the Great American Solar Eclipse definitely had um, most of the people in America's attention. Okay, like most people will probably remember where they were on that day. Okay, um, so definitely very interesting. Um, and then so the time frame of these peace deals from January 28th to February 1st was 53 weeks total, or 12 months, 5 days. Okay, so kind of like February 2nd, which is Groundhog Day, by the way, is the 12th month and the 6th day after the deal of the century. Okay. So I don't think these are coincidence. I think we're definitely seeing fulfillments of things. Okay. And so one of the things that you need to ask with Trump's quote unquote peace deals is, like, one thing we could look at is, do we have peace with God with these quote unquote peace deals? Okay. What was interesting about the deal of the century was 7 weeks after the deal of the century was the start of the coronavirus shutdown. 120 days after the deal of the century was the start of the rioting, was when BLM showed up on March 26th in 2020. Okay. 190 days after the deal of the century which was also the 71st day of writing, was the explosion in Lebanon. And so I kind of think that was August 4th. So I kind of think we moved into a fiery furnace phase um, at, at that time. Okay. Also, August 4th is also Obama's birthday. So that was kind of interesting. Okay. But what we saw is after Trump announced all these peace deals, um, there were these hurricanes or winter storms. So, so they're listed here. August 13th was the UAE deal was announced, and then we had Hurricane Laura hit the Gulf Coast 14 days later. On September 11th was the quote unquote the deal with Bahrain was announced. September 15th was the quote unquote peace deal signings, and then what we had is Hurricane Sally dumped lots of rain on the Gulf Coast on 9/15. Okay, Hurricane Sally actually formed on 9/11, so that was very interesting. Okay, the Palestinians had a day of rage on September 15th. Okay, and then October 23rd, the deal with Sudan was announced, and then we saw that Hurricane Zeta hit, was formed on the 24th and hit on the 28th. On December 10th, the deal with Morocco was announced, and Winter Storm Gale and Tampa tornadoes hit on December 16th. February 1st, the deal with Kosovo was announced, and then Winter Storm Olina, or I think this might be a second name to it, or they called it the 2021 Groundhog Day Nor'easter, which I think is really interesting. Okay, because remember I said like Groundhog Day was, here, let's go back to this slide, was um, the 12th month and the 6th day. Okay. So the winter storm hit the Northeast on January 31st. Okay. But went through Groundhog Day too. Okay. Or turned into a Groundhog Day nor'easter. Okay. I think that must be what it was. Like it started out as a winter storm and turned into a nor'easter for Groundhog Day. Okay. It's definitely very interesting. Okay. So do you think God is, are you seeing messages from God about these quote unquote peace deals? Okay. Okay. So I wanted to talk about 70 years and then what? Okay. So what is God doing? Why hasn't the Messiah come yet? Everyone was expecting something like the rapture to happen around the 70th anniversary of Israel becoming a nation, which was May 14th, 2018. Okay, and why? Why are we looking at 70 years? Because in Daniel 9, it says, in the first year of Darius, the son of Ahasuerus, a medium descent, who was made king over the kingdom of the Chaldeans, in the first year of his reign, I, Daniel, observed in the books the number of the years which was revealed as the word of the Lord to Jeremiah the prophet for the completion of the desolations of Jerusalem, namely 70 years. Okay, so one of the problems that we have is you don't exactly know when to start counting the 70 years. Okay. But there's also a psalm that talks about 70 years and 80 years. Okay. And so what was interesting is that this year was the 77th anniversary of the where they 77 years ago was when they set the Jewish people free from the okay, I'm trying to remember, from Auschwitz. Okay, that they were set free by the British soldiers, I believe. Okay, so that was 77 years ago. Anyway, so we have these two numbers, 70 and 80, and we don't totally know. I mean, I definitely think there's a connection with counting to World War II. Okay. Um, you know, but anyways, so we got these 70 years. But what was interesting is that the United States Embassy officially relocated to Jerusalem on May 14, 2018, to coincide with the 70th anniversary of the Israeli Declaration of Independence. Okay. Um, so that 70 years actually was counting from when Israel became a nation, okay, which was like, you know, after World War II, okay. Um, and so I thought that was kind of interesting. And I mean, to me, what I'm kind of wondering with Trump is that is God causing some of these signs to happen as to test his people to see whether they will, stop following Jesus and start following Trump instead. Okay. I think there might be kind of a testing. Okay. Um, we read about the beast of the earth, um, that, having some signs, um, connected to the beast of the earth. Okay. I'm going to turn to Revelation 11 in my Bible and see if I could find that chapter. Um, okay. Hang on a sec here. Sorry about that. Okay, Revelation 11. So the beast from the earth. Oh, I'm sorry. I mean Revelation 13. Um, so it says, okay, so this is the beast of the earth. So I saw another beast coming out of the earth, and he has two horns like a lamb. Okay, the two horns could connect to the two witnesses, and he spoke as a dragon. So what's interesting about the two horns like a lamb is that with Jesus, I think you have a connection with the Christians and the Jews to Jesus. And then what we have with the two witnesses is the Jewish people in Israel connected to Netanyahu and the Christians connected to Trump in America. But, Trump's also connected to Jewish people in America too. Okay. And he spoke as a dragon. He exercises all the authority of the first beast in his presence. And he, which would be in the presence of Obama. Okay. And he makes the earth and those who dwell on it to worship the first beast whose fatal wound was healed. Okay. We definitely had Obama followers definitely became strong, definitely because of Trump decided they really liked Obama and then they liked Biden. Okay. Because they hated Trump so much. Okay. And it says, so this is Revelation 13:13. He performs great signs so that he even makes fire come down out of heaven to the earth in the presence of men. Okay. And he deceives those who dwell on the earth because of the signs which it was given him to perform in the presence of the beast, causing those who dwell on the earth to make an image to the beast who had the wound of the sword and has come to life. Okay, so he caused people to vote in Biden. Okay. Um, there might be more to that, like causing an image, like uh, this fake image could be this fake image of his what he teaches, what he says about the election. Okay. Um, so anyways, so yeah, so it says, it talks about, okay, where was that about the signs? Because of the signs which it was given him to perform. Okay. So God is giving Trump the ability to perform these signs, okay, as a way of testing his people. Okay. Um, will they fall and follow Trump? Will they believe Trump's lies? Will they believe the lies of the false prophets that surround Trump? Or will they hold fast and true to the true Messiah, Jesus? Okay. Okay. So then moving on, but Gabriel in this chapter of Daniel 9, he tells Daniel there would be another 70 weeks. Okay. So Daniel said, while I was still speaking in prayer, then the man Gabriel, who I had seen in the vision previously, came to me in my extreme weariness about the time of the evening offering. He gave me instruction and talked with me and said, O Daniel, I have now come forth to give you insight with understanding. 70 weeks have been decreed for your people and your holy city to finish the transgression, to make an end of sin, to make atonement for iniquity, to bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal up vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy place. Okay, so we got to be looking for another 70 weeks or a 70-week time frame. Okay. Um, so what was very interesting to me is that 70th week after Trump's deal, quote unquote, deal of the century, there was a coalition deal was made in Israel that worked to kick Netanyahu out of the office. Okay, on the 70th week. Okay, so God made an end to Trump and Netanyahu's sin at that time. Okay, on the 70th week. Okay, so Netanyahu got kicked out of his office. What was interesting too is that Trump was already out of office at this time, but he got kicked off of Facebook and Twitter, okay, for 2 years, okay, on in the during this 70th week. Okay, so very interesting. Okay, what I thought was interesting too is that if we're looking at Biden, his 70th week. Okay, so the 70th week after 11/7/2021. Okay, so I did this whole video about Biden and how 7/11 connects to Biden. And so 11/7 was really the day when they announced Biden as the winner. Okay, which was really like day 62. Okay, which was, oh wait, no, maybe that's not true. I think 62 was January 7th. Okay. But on 11/7, they announced that Biden was the winner. And so 70 weeks after that date ended on Purim of this year, which was March 17th. Okay. So right now we are in the 71st week. Okay. It started on Shushan Purim, okay, which was March 18th. Okay. But on the Jewish calendar, we're in the middle of this week, which would be from Adar 15 to Adar 21. Okay. And then with the 8th day being Adar 22. Okay. So I don't know if this is significant. I mean, we'll just have to wait and see if something happens on the 7th day or the 8th day. Okay. Okay, so then I put this back up so we could talk about Biden being the 7th king. Okay. So I don't think there's any more new information in here. But let's talk about Biden being the 7th king. Okay, so he was voted in, or he started his term in 2021, which I think is kind of interesting with him being the 7th king, because 21 is, 7, 7 plus 7 plus 7, it's like 3 sevens, or 7 times 3 is 21. Okay, so what if day 7 equals 2021? Okay, so very interesting that Biden started his term in 2021. Okay. Okay, so like I said, Biden is the 7th king. You could parse 21 out to be 777. What's interesting about the number 7 is it relates to completion. Okay. And so what I think we could have is with 21, you could say that you have Obama, Trump, and Biden would connect to 777. Okay. Like Obama completed his first term in office, Trump completed his first term in office, and then we're going to have Biden completing his term in office, and it could be short, hopefully. And we read in Genesis 5 about how all the days of Lamech were 777 years and he died. Okay. So interesting. Okay. And then in Daniel 10 it says, but the prince of the kingdom of Persia was withstanding me for 21 days. Okay, so what if that prophetically connects to the year of 2021? And then it says, then behold, Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help me, for I had been left there with the kings of Persia. Okay, so Cyrus, the Persian, so the kings of Persia could be Obama, Trump, and Biden. Okay. And then in verse 2, Daniel talks about how he had been mourning for 3 full weeks. So Daniel could have been mourning during the 3 full weeks, could be a connection to Daniel was mourning during Obama's term, he was mourning during Trump's term, and now he's mourning during Biden's um, term. So could be a connection to that. And then what we see is somebody who's um, similar to Michael, who's similar to one of the chief princes, are going to come to help Daniel. Okay, so I think there could be a dual fulfillment with this Michael guy. He could be a picture of the Messiah coming to help Daniel, but he could also be a picture of Trump, quote unquote, coming to help, coming to quote unquote help. Like it could be a prophetic shadow of Trump returning. Okay. Um, and so then I wrote down here, so I talked about manna, okay, and how it connects to the 2 witnesses. What we saw on the 6th day in the scriptures, in the Torah, it talks about manna. You get a double portion of manna on the 6th day, okay? So that could connect to the 2 witnesses. On the 7th day, what's really interesting about the 7th day in the Torah is it calls it a Sabbath, and it is the day that God rests, okay? So, do you think it's possible that God is resting during this time of Biden, the seventh king, during the 7th day, and God is just allowing evil to get as evil and wicked as it possibly can before he's going to step in and do something? Okay. Is God, quote, like, sort of kind of sleeping right now? Okay. I mean, we read about that in the Psalms where it's like, all of a sudden God wakes up like a warrior who was sleeping from too much wine. Okay. And then he does something. Okay. I mean, I think that is talking about God, you know, could be a picture of God. It could be a picture of the Messiah, though, too. Okay. Um, okay. And so the thing about completion, too, is that what I believe with Biden's term is that God allowed Biden to win the presidency because he wanted to allow Obama and Biden to finish the fullness of their sin. Okay. So we kind of learn about that concept in Genesis 15 when God says to Abram, "Know for certain that your descendants will be strangers in a land that is not theirs, where they would be enslaved and oppressed 400 years. But I will also judge the nation whom they serve, and afterward they will come out with many possessions. Then in the fourth generation they will return here, for the iniquity of the Amorite is not yet complete." Okay, so God did not allow the Israelites to return to the land until the iniquity of the Amorites were complete. Okay, um, so we won't be set free from our slavery in America until Obama and Biden's sin iniquity is complete. Okay. Although I really think we are approaching that, especially since right now, I mean, we already had Biden already returned money to the Palestinians, and like he canceled a bunch of stuff that Trump did. And then right now he's trying to return to um, well, and then we also have him not doing anything with the Ukrainian war except sanctions. Like everybody, he's not really standing up to Putin. Putin's not afraid because of Biden's wimpiness or whatever. And then, the biggest thing right now is like, right now, Biden and his administration is they're getting close to returning to the Iran deal, which means they will return money to the Iranians, which will just allow terrorism to thrive. Um, there. But the other thing too is just the fact that they've been dilly dallying. Like, I don't know how long it's been. Okay, so when this year started, okay, so keep this in mind. So I'm calling 2022 the year of the eighth king. Okay, what was very interesting in January is that um, Okay, so they've been having these talks about the JCPOA, the Iran deal that Obama started when he was president, with John Kerry. They've been trying to like renew the JCPOA. And so they've been having all these different sessions. And what was very interesting in January was they had the eighth session in January of 2022 of the the discussions about this Iran deal. Okay, so very interesting. Okay, um, um, and so, but my point was, I was going to say the whole time they've been dilly dallying and trying to talk about um, this Iran deal and trying to get Iran to make a deal with them and return to the deal. Iran's just been, well, continuing their terrorist activities in the Middle East, but also just continuing to, uh, uh, what do they call it? Build nuclear material. Okay, so all the words went out of my head, but they have, they're up to 60% of, what is that term? uh, Uranium purifying, or I forget the word now. Okay, but they're up to 60%. Okay, so they're, I mean, I think they're already at past the amount that they need for um, nuclear energy, and now they're at the level of um, the amount that they have to start building nuclear weapons. Okay, and so all this is going on, and they actually said, people actually said they don't like, if if the discussions about the JCPOA continue, if they continue to dilly dally, um, we're going to get past the point of no return. That Iran is going to have so much nuclear material to build a nuclear weapon that, I mean, there's just no way they're going to be able to backtrack from that. Okay. Trying to think of that word. Um, kind of like purifying uranium, or can't think of it. Maybe when I think of it, I'll put it in a little box on the screen. Okay. So that's been going on. Okay, what's interesting in Judges 16:21. Okay, so back to talking about Biden being the seventh king. And so we can see Numbers 20, 21 is going to connect to Biden. Number 7 is going to connect to Biden. And so what was interesting to me is that Judges 16:21, I highlighted the number 21. It says, then the Philistines seized him and gouged out his eyes. This is the story of Samson. And they brought him down to Gaza and bound him with bronze chains. And he was a grinder in the prison. Okay. So I think there's some prophetic shadows in there, but the the Philistinians gouging out Samson's eyes, that's a picture of how the two witnesses have lost power. Okay. Trump's no longer in power. Netanyahu's no longer in power. Okay. They're no longer, Trump's no longer president. Netanyahu's no longer uh, prime minister of Israel. Okay, and then it's interesting that it says they brought him down to Gaza and bound him with bronze chains. Okay, so remember I told you that um, Obama's Obama, and then you got Biden. Obama's like the belly of the beast. That connects to the bronze part of the statue. Okay, and then the bronze thighs. Okay, connects to Biden. Okay, so very interesting. Bronze chains. Okay, so right now, Biden is the one that is keeping Trump bound. Okay. Um, okay, and so then I was wondering too, with 777 for 2021. Um, in Zechariah 4, we read, then I said to him, what are these two olive trees on the right of the lampstand and on its left? And I answered the second time and said to him, what are the two olive branches which are beside the two golden pipes, which empty the golden oil from themselves? So he answered me, saying, Do you not know what these are? And I said, No, my Lord. Then he said, These are the two anointed ones who are standing by the Lord of the whole earth. Okay. Um, so this could be talking about the two witnesses, okay, because it does connect to Revelation 11 4, where it says, These are the two olive trees and the two lampstands that stand before the Lord of the earth. Um, but I'm not really sure, like, what if the olive trees would be a connection to um, Netanyahu and Trump, okay? Um, because that would connect to their peace deals, okay? Because doesn't the dove bring an olive branch in its mouth? Okay, so that connects to peace. And what if the lampstands connect to, because the lampstands you have well, okay, I guess in these verses it says the two olive trees, one's on the right and one's on the left. But um, I think it's what I'm thinking is the olive trees and the lampstands, kind of have a dual fulfillment. So at first they connect to the two witnesses, but then they connect to, like, right now I'm wondering if they connect to Trump and Biden. Okay, because Biden's on the left and Trump's on the right. Okay. And it talks about these two olive branches which are emptying the golden from themselves. Okay. So emptying the golden, Trump and Biden are acting like messianic figures. That's what I'm wondering about that. Okay. Because it talks about these are the two anointed ones who are standing by the Lord of the whole earth. Okay. Because we know that when Jesus was crucified, he had a thief on his right and a thief on his left. Okay. Um, so I think these are some prophetic shadows that we're fulfilling. Okay, so what's interesting is you kind of put up three lampstands with the middle one being Messiah and then one being Trump and one being Biden, and that will get you 777. Okay, that's what I'm wondering. So in Revelation 11, it says, I will grant authority to my two witnesses, and they will prophesy for 1260 days. So we already talked about the 1260, clothed in sackcloth. These are the two olive trees. So one thought I had too is that olive trees could connect to the wild olive trees that we read about in Romans, okay, that Paul writes about, and the two lampstands that stand before the Lord of the earth. And if anyone wants to harm them, fire flows out of their mouth and devours the enemies. They speak like a dragon. So if anyone wants to harm him, he must be killed in this way. Okay. So, basically, how does Trump, quote unquote, kill his enemies? Okay. By his fiery speech. Okay. And then it says, These have the power to shut up the sky so that rain will not fall during during the days of their prophesying. Okay. So 2020 was a time of drought. Okay. While these quote unquote peace deals were going on. Okay. Um, but we also had hurricanes too. Okay. Um, and then they had the power over the waters to turn them into blood. So that would be the hurricanes causing destruction and to strike the earth with every plague. 2020 was also the year of plagues. We had these hurricanes, we had the coronavirus. Okay. Um, and then so they strike the earth with every plague as often as they desire. Okay. So, I mean, really what it means is that every time they make a peace deal, they cause another plague to come, okay, because they're being judged, okay. But what we see too is a connection to, so we had Moses and Aaron are in the story of, they're in Egypt during the time of the 10 plagues, okay. So that's definitely a connection to the two witnesses, which I believe are Trump and Netanyahu, okay. Then what we see is when they have finished their testimony, the beast that comes out of the abyss will make war with them and overcome them and kill them. So what's interesting is that's Revelation 11:7. So remember 11:7 is the day they announced that Biden won, okay? And so I highlighted 7, okay? On November 7th, Biden's battle with Trump, well, the announcement of, so the beast that came out of the abyss, Biden made war with Trump, and won the election. But we also had a very similar thing happen in Israel, and they really kind of battled with Netanyahu to get him out of power. Okay. Um, and so they overcame them and killed them. They killed their power. Okay. And then it says their dead bodies will lie in the street of the great city, which mystically is called Sodom and Egypt, where also their Lord was crucified. So what we see is, even though like Trump and Netanyahu don't have power, they're still, we still hear from them. They're still around. you know, um, their dead bodies are still, kind of like speaking from the ground. you know, crying out. I mean, they're still saying stuff all the time. So what if Sodom is connects to America and Egypt connects to Israel? Um, so um, where also their Lord was crucified. I mean, we know that Jesus was physically crucified in the land of Israel, um, but in America, it used to be a Christian nation and it no longer is. So that would be a connection to that. Okay. And then it says, those from the people and tribes and tongues and nations will look at their dead bodies for 3.5 days. Okay. And not permit their dead bodies to be laid in a tomb. So like I said, it's, um, I mean, we definitely have the Trump followers are not willing to lay Trump's body in a tomb. Okay, they still think he won. Okay, they're definitely like waiting for him to return. Um, so what did I write in here? 3.5. So 3.5 days. 3 days is the time of Jonah and the whale. Okay, that connects to Biden's time. Okay, I talked about that in my last video. Um, um, so the whale would connect to it. Biden is the beast from the sea, okay, which I think he is. Jonah and the whale would be a picture of Trump's in the belly of Biden, okay, the belly of the whale. Okay, point 5 would connect to the dividing of time, okay, which I believe is the return of Trump, okay. And then it says, will not permit their dead bodies to be laid in a tomb. Well, so I talked about how Trump followers won't, you know, like concede and say that Trump didn't win the election. But we also see like Biden kept mentioning Trump to keep his approval ratings up. Also, we have the January 6th commission is investigating, um, because they'd like to get some of those people um, arrested and stuff, but they're not like, they don't think we should let go of January 6th, that we should investigate it, which I actually agree we should, to try to understand what happened on January 6th. Okay. So we just continue to hear about Trump in the news all the time. Netanyahu's in the news all the time. Like he just said something today about the Iranian deal. Um, and then it says, and those who dwell on the earth will rejoice over them and celebrate, and they will send gifts to one another. Okay, sending gifts to one another, that connects to, okay, so these would be the people that were excited that um, Biden won, and then it'd be the people in Israel that were excited that Netanyahu was no longer prime minister. Okay, and so sending gifts to one another would connect to the Belshazzar story in Daniel 5. Okay, so what we have is, um, uh, so in Daniel 5, Belshazzar was drinking the wine. They were drinking out of the holy vessels. Okay, and so what we have is Democrats are spending Americans' money on their socialistic uh, programs. Okay, um, that God wouldn't be really happy about. Um, and so that connects to that. And so I'm not really sure. I'm assuming there's probably something similar happened in Israel, but I'm not really sure um, about that. Um, I mean, if you know, put a comment down, okay? Um, um, but I definitely see that happening in America. I mean, yeah. And then it says, because these two prophets tormented those who dwell on the earth. I mean, it is kind of interesting, the people that are anti-Trump, just how um, like how much they really hate Trump, you know, or how much they really hate Netanyahu. Um, and then it says, after the 3.5 days, the breath of life came into them, and they stood on their feet, and great fear fell upon those who were watching them. And they heard a loud voice from heaven saying to them, "Come up here." Then they went up into heaven in the cloud, and their enemies watched them. And in that hour there was a great earthquake, and a tenth of the city fell. 7,000 people were killed in the earthquake, and the rest were terrified and gave glory to the God of heaven. Um, so I highlighted them, and I was thinking, well, so is it possible that means that both Trump and Netanyahu are going to return? But then also too, what just while I was reading this, I got to thinking, well, maybe them actually connects to Trump and the Messiah, because remember where we read about the eighth king, that this the one that comes for destruction is also an eighth, and so maybe Messiah is also an eighth. Okay. And so we're going to see Trump and the Messiah come at the same time. Okay. Because what? Jesus comes like a thief in the night. Okay. Just like a thief in the night. So Trump's going to come and try to steal back the presidency, the thief. Okay. And Messiah's going to come at the same time. Okay. And separate God's people out. Okay. Um, and then, okay. And so then it says they heard a loud voice from heaven. Okay, that could be Trump, but also the voice of Messiah could be saying, okay, so what I think is going to happen is, so we have the wheat and the tares, okay, and we're going to have Trump is going to have a loud voice from, he's trying to, act like a Messiah, so his voice from heaven, he's going to say to his followers, "Come up here." Okay. Let's build this false messianic kingdom that I'm trying to build. But at the same time, we're going to have Messiah saying to his followers, "Come up here." Okay. And then it says they went up into heaven in the cloud. Okay. So there's two kind of prophetic pictures with this cloud. One is the cloud is a prophetic picture of the delusional influence that is now currently on the Trump followers. Okay. But it also could be a picture of when you're applying it to the messianic followers. Um, it's also a picture of how Jesus's people are hidden by the cloud. Okay. So, because what we're gonna see is that the Trump and his followers, they're gonna start doing destruction. Okay. And it's gonna be a picture of like Sodom and Gomorrah. Okay. And in Sodom and Gomorrah, we have the men of Sodom were trying to get to the door, but they couldn't find the door. Okay. The angels hid the view. Um, you know, they couldn't see the door because of, what the angels did. And so that's what I believe is going to happen is Messiah is going to come, and he's going to hide his followers. Okay. And so they're going to be protected while Trump starts this civil war in America. Okay. That's the Passover picture. Okay. Remember that death came but passed over the Israelites. Okay. And then it says, and their enemies watched them. And in that hour, and so the enemies watching, that's a picture of, in Babylon where you have the men in the ships at sea were watching the destruction of Babylon. Okay. And in that hour was a great earthquake, and a tenth of the city fell. Okay, so what if the tenth connects to the 10 toes or the 10 horns that receive power with the beast for 1 hour? Okay, that connects to the 10 spies in the wilderness that don't have faith. Okay, so 10 spies in the wilderness have faith, 10 of them, two of them, I mean, 10 spies don't have faith, and then but two of them do. Okay. And so that connects to what I believe is we're down. Okay, so this is what I really believe in prophecy. I think we're down to the feet of the statue, of Daniel's statue. Okay. And so I think maybe the 2 feet could connect to one of the feet could connect to Trump, like the right foot connects to Trump, the left foot connects to Biden. Except that doesn't connect to the two spies that have faith. Although, what I think is that we could have some followers on the right, like true followers of Jesus on the right and true followers of Jesus on the left, is what I'm thinking. Okay. But what we read is, but we definitely have 10 toes and 2 feet. Um, so the 10 toes definitely connect to the 10 spies without faith. Okay. So in Daniel 2, it says its legs of iron, its feet partly of iron and partly of clay. So that connects, like I said, I think there's some, um, true followers of Jesus on the right and true followers of Jesus on the left. Okay. And so this talks about you continued looking until a stone was cut out without hands, and it struck the statue on its feet of iron and clay and crushed them. Then the iron, the clay, the bronze, the silver, and the gold were crushed all at the same time and became like chaff from the summer threshing floors. And the wind carried them away so that not a trace of them was found. But the stone that struck the statue became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. Okay, the stone is Messiah, Jesus. Okay. In that you saw the feet and the toes. Okay, so this is the interpretation in that same chapter. In that you saw the feet and the toes, partly of potter's clay and partly of iron. It will be a divided kingdom, but it will have in it the toughness of iron, inasmuch as you saw the iron mixed with common clay. So it's possible that iron could connect to Trump and clay could connect to Biden. Um, but I'm a little bit more certain that iron connects to like Trump and his followers, but the common clay connects to the, you know, Jesus's followers. As the toes of the feet were partly of iron and partly of pottery, some of the kingdom will be strong and part of it will be brittle. And in that you saw the iron mixed with common clay, they will combine with one another in the seed of men, but they will not adhere to one another, even as iron does not combine with pottery. Okay. So, like, I mean, we definitely see that, like, with the Republicans, we have, like, the Trump followers, but, there's other people that would call themselves Republicans, but they're not willing to jump on the Trump bandwagon. Okay. So they're kind of combining with them, under the title of Republican, but they're not adhering to one another. Okay. Um, and I'm sure that's true on the left too. Okay. Um, so let's see, I had one other thought. So I thought it was interesting. It says some of the kingdom will be strong and part of it will be brittle. I'd be curious to know what that Hebrew word is there, or Aramaic maybe word, because maybe like the pottery, um, would be kind of like soft and not strong like the iron, you know, um, and it's interesting that it calls it common clay because I really talk about Jesus's followers being kind of the poor and the oppressed right now in the world. Okay, and so um, right now God is allowing um, like for example Trump and his followers, he's allowing them to be strong and to like just have a lot of power, whereas God's followers are really kind of like oppressed and, just don't have a lot of power. And, so I was wondering if that's kind of what this chapter is saying about them, but we're going to see a reversal of fortune where then God's going to give the power to his people and then Trump's people will no longer have power. Um, and the riches, same thing with Biden and his followers, a reversal of fortunes, Okay. So, so two olive trees emptying the golden oil. What I thought was interesting is that term red, white, and blue. You could have red, is the Republicans, blue is the Democrats, and then white, so that could be, the picture of um, um, the white could connect to Jesus, red could connect to Trump, and blue connects to Biden. Okay. because red connects to the right, blue connects to the left. What I thought was interesting in Job 3:5, it says, "For you took my silver and my gold and carried off my finest treasures to your temples." Okay. So we definitely see that with Biden right now. I mean, we saw Trump doing that when he was president. He was willing to like sell the land of Israel out from under the Jews to make these peace deals to make a name for himself, him and Netanyahu. Um, and then we see that with Joe Biden right now, using Americans' money for socialist ideas and programs. So that's what I think connects to that. Okay, so since this video is about the beast from the sea, let's talk about the beast from the sea. Okay, and then it says the dragon stood on the sand of the seashore, and then I saw a beast coming up out of the sea, having 10 horns and 7 heads, and on his horns were 10 diadems, and on his heads were blasphemous names. And the beast which I saw was like a leopard, and his feet were like those of a bear, and his mouth was like the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power and his throne and great authority. I saw one of his heads as if it had been slain, and his fatal wound was healed. And the whole earth was amazed and followed after the beast. They worshipped the dragon because he gave his power to the beast, and they worshipped the beast, saying, "Who is like the beast, and who is able to wage war with him?" There was given to him a mouth speaking arrogant words and blasphemies, and authority to act for 42 months was given to him. And he opened his mouth in blasphemies against God, to blaspheme his name and his tabernacle, that is, those who dwell in heaven. It was also given to him to make war with the saints and to overcome them, and authority over every tribe and people and tongue and nation was given to him. All who dwell on the earth will worship him, everyone whose name has not been written from the foundation of the world in the book of life of the Lamb who has been slain. If anyone has an ear, let him hear. If anyone is destined for captivity, to captivity he goes. If anyone kills with the sword he must be killed. Here is the perseverance and the faith of the saints. Okay, so like I said, I think the dragon that stood on the sand of the seashore, I mean, the sand of the seashore could be a picture of God's people, okay? And the dragon stood on God's people. Okay, I think Obama is the dragon. Remember how I said that, like Christianity was oppressed during the time of Obama? Okay, he was standing on God's people. Then I saw a beast coming up out of the sea, having 10 horns and 7 heads. Okay, so 10 horns connected, 10 without faith, and then 7 heads. So what I'm wondering about the 7 heads, if that connects to G7. Okay, and so the 7 heads could connect to the 7 nations that are in G7. Okay, um, um, and so let's see, and because what's interesting is it talks about the beast being connected to, um, you know, it was like a leopard, and its feet were like a bear, and his mouth was like the mouth of a lion. I mean, one thought I had about the leopard is that connects to kind of the black and white issue. Okay. Um, Now the feet of a bear, um, um, that could connect to, you remember I said, I think we're at the feet of the statue. Um, you know, I don't know if the bear could maybe possibly connect to Putin. Okay. And so what we have now is like we're down at the feet, and then we have the bear is currently waging war. Okay. And then it says his mouth like the mouth of a lion. With the lion of the king of Judah connects to Jesus. And so we have Biden talking like he's a messianic figure. Okay. It says the dragon gave him his power and throne and great authority. You could definitely say that Obama gave Biden his power and authority. Um, and then it says, I saw one of his heads as if it had been slain, and his fatal wound was healed. Okay, so what was interesting about G7, I mean, if you understood what happened during the time of Obama, he was pretty connected to these seven nations and they had great plans for the world. Okay. But then they were all bummed when Obama lost the presidency because they thought their plans were dead. You know, they thought Obama's plans were dead. Okay. But then what we had is Biden came back and revived everything that Obama was doing. Okay. Um, so the fatal wound was healed, you know, when Biden returned. Okay. Um, and then it says the whole earth was amazed after the beast. They worshiped the dragon because he gave his authority to the beast, and they worshiped the beast, who was like the beast and able to wage war with them. And then it says there was given to him a mouth speaking arrogant words and blasphemies and authority to act for 42 months. Okay, I think right here, I don't totally know how it works, but I think this connects to the Black Lives Matter because they had power during the time of Trump. Like 42 months connects to Trump's time. Okay. Um, and we definitely saw like the people. Okay, there was given to him a mouth speaking arrogant words and blasphemy and authority to act for 42 months. Basically, the people on the left were allowed to, I mean, they were rioting and looting and stuff during the time of Trump's presidency. I mean, even before, even during Trump's inauguration, the rioting started, okay, or protesting and, stuff like that. And so we saw people on the left doing that during the time of Trump. Um, and and it says, um, so God allowed BLM to have power during time of Trump. Um, and he opened his mouth in blasphemies against God to blaspheme his name and his tabernacle, that is, those who dwell in heaven. It was also given to him to make war with the saints and to overcome them, and authority over every tribe and people and tongue and nation was given to him. Um, so the beast of the sea could be Biden, but I think it could just kind of represent, um, everyone on the left, and and so BLM would be under this umbrella of the beast from the sea. And so we definitely see, the blasphemies against God's people, calling everyone in America racist, um, uh, misogynist, homophobes, everything that Hillary called us. Um, and then, um, okay, so then what's interesting, it says if anyone is destined for captivity, to captivity goes. I think that's interesting that that's connected to the beasts of the sea because we definitely saw lockdowns under Biden, but just, we saw a lot of the people on the left were, really more for the lockdowns, okay, than like the people on the right. Um, and then it's interesting that it talks about if anyone kills with the sword he must be killed. So that could be a connection to Putin's war, okay? So, we got to recognize that God, is going to bring judgment, okay? And so the ones that caused us to be captive, he's going to put them into captivity. And then with Putin killing with the sword, he's going to be killed, okay? Okay, so let's talk about Trump returning. Um, um, so Joseph said, okay, so from Genesis 48, Joseph said to his father, "They are my sons, whom God has given me here." So he said, "Bring them to me, please, that I may bless them." Now the eyes of Israel were so dim from age that he could not see. Okay, so this is talking about Joseph bringing his two sons to be blessed by his father. Okay, um, Manasseh and Ephraim. Okay, so what we see here is it says the eyes of Israel, so those would be the eyes of Jacob, were so dim from age that he could not see. Okay, so that could be a picture of the two witnesses dimmed in power, but it also could be a picture of, it's interesting that, here God chooses to call Jacob Israel, it says the eyes of Israel were so dim from age that he could not see. That could be also a picture of the deluding influence on the Trump followers. Okay. Then Joseph brought them close to him, and he kissed them and embraced them. Israel said to Joseph, I never expected to see your face, and behold, God has let me see your children as well. Then Joseph took them from his knees and bowed with his face to the ground. Joseph took them both, Ephraim with his right hand toward Israel's left, and Manasseh with his left hand toward Israel's right, and brought him close to him. But Israel stretched out his right hand and laid it on the head of Ephraim, who was the younger, and his left hand on Manasseh's head, crossing his hands, although Manasseh was the firstborn. Okay, so sometimes prophecy is hard because I think God packs a lot of stuff, and I think things change from line to line too. And so at first, when Joseph's bringing Ephraim and Manasseh toward his father, he's bringing Ephraim with his right hand and Manasseh with his left hand. Okay, first of all, we have that messianic picture with Joseph in the middle and Ephraim on the right and Manasseh on the left. You know, that's Jesus on the cross with the two thieves. You know, so we definitely know Trump's on the right, Biden's on the left. Okay, and so then, you know, he brings him close to his father. Okay, but Israel stretches out his right hand and lays it on the hand of. Okay, so this is an interesting line right here where he's doing a reversal. Okay. Um, and okay, so Jacob is stretching out his hands and um, he's laying his hand on the, his right hand on the head of Ephraim, who was the younger, and his left hand on Manasseh's head, crossing his hands. Okay, that's not normally how you bless your children. Okay, you put the older on the right and the younger on the left. Okay, but Jacob here is doing it differently. He's putting his right hand on Ephraim. Like Joseph brought him toward him, you know, the way that they should have been blessed. Okay, with Manasseh being blessed as the firstborn. Okay, but Jacob was like, no, we're doing this differently. And he ended up, you know, blessing Ephraim like the firstborn. Okay. Um, you know, so something different is happening here. Okay, and so what I think we're seeing is a picture of the reversal of fortunes. Okay, it's a picture of the judgment of the firstborn. You know, so basically right now you have I mean, basically right now we have like the tares right now are like the firstborn. Okay, they have the power, they have the blessing. Okay, but when the Messiah comes, God's going to do a reversal of fortunes, and it's going to be the younger ones who are not the firstborn. They are, I mean, it's going to be Jesus's followers are now finally going to be in the position of the firstborn. They're going to have the leadership and the power and the blessing. Okay. Um, and then what's interesting about it is we'll keep reading on. It says, when Joseph saw that his father laid his right hand on Ephraim's head, it displeased him, and he grasped his father's hand to remove it from Ephraim's head to Manasseh's head. Joseph said to his father, not so, my father, for this one is the firstborn. Place your right hand on his head. But his father refused and said, I know, my son, I know. He also will become a people, and he also will be great. However, his younger brother will be greater than he, and his descendants shall become a multitude of nations. He blessed them that day, saying, by you Israel will pronounce blessing, saying, may God make you like Ephraim and Manasseh. Thus he put Ephraim before Manasseh. Okay, but what's interesting is that I think there's another thing that God has hidden. Like, prophecy is so deep and rich. Is that the other thing that I believe the picture that God is painting here is that what we have is Joseph is trying to take his father's hand to remove it from Ephraim's head and put it on Manasseh's head. Okay. So what we have is this Joseph. Okay, so right now Joseph could be representing, there's somebody, he's representing somebody who's trying to, like, uh um change the order of things. Okay. um because, okay, because Joseph was displeased that the blessing was going to Ephraim. Okay. So he was trying to make the blessing go to Manasseh. Okay. um um but his father refuses. Okay. So I actually think there's a little bit of a picture here of, um first of all, we have the followers of Trump that are displeased that, so right here, I think Ephraim and Manasseh could be a picture of Trump and Biden. Okay. And what we have is the Trump followers are displeased that right now the blessing and the position of firstborn went to Biden. Okay. They were very unhappy that that happened during the election. And so what we're going to have is that to, they're, um, they're going to try to remove the blessing off of Ephraim's head, off of President Biden's head, to put it on Manasseh's head. Okay. So isn't that interesting? Like how much prophecy is like squished into this little story. Very fascinating to me. Okay. So hopefully you followed that. Um, so definitely very interesting. But I like the part that it ends where he says, "Thus he put Ephraim before Manasseh," because if Manasseh is the firstborn, is the tares, is the Trump followers, he's going to put his people before Manasseh. Okay. We're finally going to have God's blessing. Okay. Yay. Finally. So, um, okay. So then let's talk about Samson the judge. It says, okay, so remember they were trying to get Samson. Um, Delilah, was trying to get Samson. And so she said, "The Philistines are upon you, Samson." And he awoke from his sleep and said, "I will go out as at other times and shake myself free." But he did not know that the Lord had departed from him. Okay. So that connects to, remember I said verse 21, it says, "The Philistines seized him and gouged out his eyes and bound him with bronze chains." Okay. But then it must go on. It says, "Now the Lord of the Philistines assembled to offer a great sacrifice to Dagon their god." Could be a picture of, um, it could be a picture of Biden's people offering their sacrifice using America's riches, to sacrifice to Dagon their god. But it also could be a picture of Biden with his war, because right now he's sacrificing the people in Ukraine for his God, whatever his God is of, power and whatever. Um, and then it says, "For they said, our God has given Samson, our enemy, into our hands." See, that could be a picture of how Putin's saying, God is, we used to be afraid of America, but now God has given America into my hands. And so now Putin no longer has to be afraid of America and could wage this war. Okay. And then it says, "When the people saw him, they praised their God, for they said, our God has given our enemy into our hands, even the destroyer of our country, who has slain many of us." Okay, and then it said, "It so happened when they were in high spirits that they said, 'Call for Samson that he may amuse us.'" Okay, so they called for Samson from the prison and he entertained them and they made him stand between the pillars. Okay, so um, so this could be, this could relate to, okay, well, so what we have, so remember that I said, like, there was this, Joseph was representing these people that wanted to, you know uh, put Trump back into power. And so, what we're going to see is that Trump's followers are going to say, "Call for Samson that he may amuse us." um, they're going to call, for Trump to come back, because they want, whatever. They want to be amused. Okay. They want Samson to come out. They want Trump to come out from prison and entertain them. Okay. Um, and then it says, and they made him stand between the pillars. Okay, that's, they're going to put Trump in the place where Jesus should be standing. Okay. But that's that messianic picture. Um, because really, it's supposed to be Jesus on the cross, with the two thieves on either side. Um, but then I guess at one time when I typed this up, I talked about, call for Samson that he may amuse us. Oh yeah, I wrote January 6th tributes because we did see in January 6th of this year, the 1 year anniversary of January 6th, that they actually had some tributes. It just shows how nutty people were, that they um, um, I mean, it was interesting in January 6th, like who was seeing it as a good day and who was seeing it as a bad day. But I might have been talking about because, um, you know, I mean, in the story, Samson's still in prison, but they wanted to bring him up. They want him to come out to amuse them, and be entertained by them. And so we saw how, like, even with the people on the left, that January 6th was like kind of this, important day for them, to really make a big deal about. Like, they even talked about it being like worse than 9/11 and Pearl Harbor, stuff like that. So, you know, I think that's what I could be referring to there. Um, but I definitely think, though, it ultimately relates to the last days when they're going to when Trump followers are going to try to bring Trump back. Um, okay. So then Samson said to the boy who was holding his hand, "Let me feel the pillars on which the house rests, that I may lean against them." Now the house was full of men and women, and all the lords of the Philistines were there. About 3,000 men and women were on the roof, looking on while Samson was amusing them. Okay, 3,000, that's a connection to 9/11. Okay. It's also a connection to, what is it? It's the sin of the golden calf. Okay, because 3,000 died at the sin of the golden calf. Okay. Um, um, so then Samson called to the Lord and said, "O Lord God, please remember me and please strengthen me just this time, O God, that I may at once be avenged of the Philistine for my two eyes." Okay, so God's gonna allow Trump to have a little. He's gonna allow Trump to return for a short amount of time, so he could avenge himself on the Philistines, for him and Netanyahu. But it's just going to be a short time. Okay. And then Samson grabbed the two middle pillars on which the house rested and braced himself against them, the one with his right hand, the other with his left. And Samson said, "Let me die with the Philistines." And he bent with all his might, so that the house fell on the lords and on and all the people who were in it. So the dead whom he killed at his death were more than those whom he killed in his life. Then his brothers and all his father's household came down, took him, brought him up, and buried him between Zorah and Eshtaol in the tomb of Manoah his father. Thus he had judged Israel 20 years. So the 20 years could connect to the return of Trump, the second time of Trump. Okay. Um, I think it's very interesting that Samson says, "Let me die with the Philistines." Okay. I mean, I see here with Samson coming to kill the Philistines, that could be a picture of Trump coming against the people on the left, him and his followers, the civil war that I talked about in America. Okay. But it's interesting that Samson says, "Let me die with the Philistines," because we have Esther, when she's about to go to the king, she says, "Okay, I'll go to the king, and if I die, I die." Okay. And then there's another story. Or she says, if I perish, I perish. I think there's a couple other times too where that happens in scripture. But I'm not remembering now what the other two stories are. Um, where um, people are willing to die, like they're willing to go to war, and then if they die, they're willing to die for their cause, or whatever. But I forget the other two. It's too bad, but I forget the other ones right now. So very interesting, but definitely a connection to Esther. And see, Esther goes into the middle. She goes into the inner court. Okay, and so um, and it talks about the king being on the other side. Okay, um, and so I see that as a picture of, it's very similar to January 6th where they went into the inner sanction. Okay, um, and so and we had the Trump followers. They were willing to, um, I mean, they are willing to go to war, for their cause to bring back Trump. Okay, so kind of scary, but it's helpful if you know it's in prophecy and you know that God is going to, you put you under His booth of safety during this time. Okay, um, so you know, so just, look up for your redemption draws nigh, follow Jesus. When you see the abomination of desolation, which would be this civil war that Trump and his followers start, you're the followers, the people in Judah are supposed to flee to the mountains. So, we're supposed to flee where Jesus is. Jesus is going to say, "Come up here," and we're supposed to follow him. He'll tell us where to go. And then we'll talk about the cupbearer and the baker. Um, it says, it came about after these things, the cupbearer and the baker for the king of Egypt offended their lord, the king of Egypt. Pharaoh was furious with his two officials, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker. I think at the beginning, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker are Trump and Netanyahu, because it says Pharaoh was furious with his two officials. So that's God being furious with Trump and Netanyahu. Okay. So he put them in confinement in the house of the captain of the bodyguard in the jail, the same place where Joseph was imprisoned. Okay. Trump and Netanyahu lose power. Okay. It says in the same place where Joseph was imprisoned. I mean, that could be a picture of Obama, in prison. Oh, or yeah, or the Messiah being in prison. And then it says, this is funny. It says the captain of the bodyguard put Joseph in charge of them, and he took care of them, and they were in confinement for some time. So, isn't Biden's first name Joseph? So, or Joe Biden. So I thought that was interesting. So that's a picture of Biden being in charge of them. So then it goes on to talk about, and then, Joseph interprets their dreams. It goes on, talks about that. And so then Joseph said to the cupbearer, okay, so this is the interpretation of the cupbearer dream. This is the interpretation of it. The 3 branches are 3 days. Within 3 more days, Pharaoh will lift up your head and restore you to the office. And you will put Pharaoh's cup into his hand according to your former custom when you were his cupbearer. Only keep me in mind when it goes well with you, and please do me a kindness by mentioning to Pharaoh and get me out of this house. Um, so I was gonna say, I think originally I put this in here saying this is a picture of Trump being restored to the office. That at the end of the story, that the cupbearer would be Trump and the baker would be Biden. But then it's interesting. Okay, so let's look at this. The 3 branches are 3 days. Within 3 more days. Yeah. Okay, so what I'm thinking is 3 days would be the term of Obama. The second 3 days would be the term of Biden. Okay, because remember Jonah is in the belly of the whale for 3 days and 3 nights. Okay, so during the time of Obama and during the time of Biden. Okay, but then after this time frame, Then Pharaoh will lift your head. That's a picture of God lifting up Trump's head to restore him to his office, to restore Trump to his office. Okay. And then it says you will put Pharaoh's cup into his hand according to your former custom. So basically, Trump's gonna he's gonna put the cup of judgment into Pharaoh's hand. You know, God's gonna use Trump to bring judgment on Biden and his followers. Okay, and it says according to your former customs. So remember that Trump, because of his quote unquote peace deals, brought judgment to the world. Okay, he's gonna continue to bring judgment when he returns. Okay. Um, but then Joseph says, "Keep me in mind when it goes well with you." Well, what I think happens is the cupbearer doesn't remember Joseph. That's a picture of Trump doesn't remember Jesus. Okay. You know, he ends up trying to take Jesus's place. Okay. Okay, but the baker. Okay, let's talk about the baker. Then Joseph answered and said, "This is its interpretation." So this is the interpretation of the baker's dream. The 3 baskets are 3 days. Okay, within 3 more days, Pharaoh will lift up your head from you and will hang you on a tree, and the birds will eat your flesh off of you. Thus it came about on the 3rd day, which was Pharaoh's birthday, that he made a feast for all his servants, and he lifted up the head of the chief cupbearer and the head of the chief baker among his servants. He restored the chief cupbearer to his office, and he put the cup into Pharaoh's hand. But he hanged the chief baker just as Joseph had interpreted to him. Yet the chief cupbearer did not remember Joseph, but forgot him. Okay, so remember, Trump forgets Jesus. Okay. So the 3 baskets are 3 days. So that actually probably connects to time of Obama, time of Trump, time of Biden. Okay, so we're on the 3rd basket. Okay. And then what we have is, so then it says within 3 more days, Biden will lift up your head from you. That could be a picture of Trump stealing Biden's leadership position. Will hang you on a tree so Biden gets crucified by the Trump followers, and the birds will eat your flesh off of you. And then it says, then it came about on the 3rd day, which was Pharaoh's birthday, that he made a feast for all his servants, and he lifted up the head of the chief cupbearer and the head of the chief baker among his servants. He restored the chief cupbearer to his office, and he put the cup into Pharaoh's hand. But he hanged the chief baker just as Joseph had interpreted to him. So, is it possible in year 2022, we're going to see someone who is like the chief baker being hung? Okay, so if Biden is the baker, we can see him being hung in the year of 2022. Okay, so I was wondering, like, what would make Biden the baker? Okay, the bread gets baked by the baker. Um, so that could be a picture of Biden, like, kind of like we're in the time of the fiery furnace, okay? And God's people are, I mean, we're being prepared for the Messianic era. We're being baked, okay? Because what's interesting is that the prophets talk about Ephraim is like a cake half turned. Okay, so like if that's a picture of the tares, they're not completely baked. Okay, they're half baked. Okay, but God's people are fully baked because um, the baker baked them. Okay, except that the problem with that is that the birds are eating the bread out of the 3rd basket. So that would be a picture of, I mean, apparently Biden's baking his people too, and they're in this 3rd basket. Okay. Um, so that's probably that picture. So, okay. Okay. So some clues for 2022. Okay. So what if day 8 is 2022? Let's see. The 22nd is the eighth day. So is 2022, since it's the eighth day, when we will see the eighth king returned. Okay, so what I'm wondering is, so are we needing then a return of Trump so that there's a time of the fullness of Trump and Netanyahu's sin? Okay, with the return of Trump. I'm not sure if Netanyahu's coming back. Um, so, I mean, at one point I used to think that, I mean, I was seeing in the scripture, like, it looks like it's possible that Israel would get attacked. Um, and then Jesus will come and resurrect people in Israel. You know, I get that from the story of Lazarus. You know, so I used to see that. I'm, you know, haven't really looked at that recently, so I'm not really sure. Um, but I think that's highly possible. Okay, and then what? What else is interesting about the eighth day in Scripture? It's the day of circumcision, which is the day of the removal of flesh. Okay, you know, so if we have, you know, like Jesus has the thief on the right and the thief on the left, you know, um, that, you know, when Jesus returns, it's going to be a removal of the thief on the right and the thief on the left. Okay. What's interesting too is 2022 adds up to 6. Okay. So I don't know if that's a clue, you know, so we can expect the sixth king to return on day 8. So the scripture tells us to wait for the 1335th day. We already saw 1335 was that, I think that happened on, you know, the signing. They had the signing on September 15th in 2020. I think that ended up being a 1335 day, you know, but then, you know, Daniel says, wait till the end, you know, like it says, blessed is he who waits for the 1335, but then they tell Daniel to go your way till the end. Okay, so Trump's people were like blessed on September 15th. Okay, but if you're following Jesus, you don't want to be blessed on that day. You want to wait till the end. Okay, but I'm also wondering if 1335 connects to, one connects to the first time of Trump. The 3 and the 3 are the 3 days and nights in the belly of the sea monster. So, like I said, 3 days connects to Obama, 3 nights connect to Biden. Because what we see is in Esther, she says the Jews fast for 3 days and 3 nights. So that would be Messiah's people. And then we have Esther and her maidens are fasting. That would connect to Trump's people during the time of Obama and Biden. Okay. And then what we have is 5 could connect to the dividing of time, the half a week, the return of Trump. And then, so Passover day 8, you know, I also talked about it could connect to Shavuot and Pentecost. And then, so the day 8 connects to day 50, which, you know, would also connect to, you know, the 5 being the 8th day. Okay, the return of Trump. Okay. Hopefully that makes sense. And hopefully we don't have to wait for the actual day of Shavuot and Pentecost, because that's so far away. So, I mean, the world's like crazy now, and so I'm hoping it's sooner rather than later. Um, so, okay, let's see. Revelation 17. Here's the mind which has wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sits, and they are 7 kings. Okay, so I already read this. The beast which was and is not is himself also an 8th and is one of the 7, and he goes to destruction. Okay, so remember, he goes to destruction. And that connects to these verses in Daniel 9, where it says, 70 weeks have been decreed for your people and your holy city. I already read those verses. So you are to know and discern that from the issuing of a decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem until Messiah the Prince, there will be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. It will be built again with plaza and moat, even in times of distress. Then after the 62 weeks, the anointed will be cut off and have nothing, and the people of the prince who is to come will destroy the city and the sanctuary, and its end will come with the flood, even to the end there be war, desolations are determined, and he will make a firm covenant with the many for 1 week, but in the middle of the week he will put a stop to sacrifice and grain offering. And on the wing of abominations will come one who makes desolate, even until a complete destruction, one that is decreed is poured out on the one who makes desolate. So we already talked about 70 weeks. And then it says, you are to know and discern that from the issuing of a decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem. Um, so that could connect to Trump, issuing his decree to move the embassy to Jerusalem. But it also could connect to like the calling of Jesus, okay, where God is issuing a decree, where he decides he's gonna call Jesus to return, and so I don't know when that time frame would be, but well, I mean, basically it's like this, like when Jesus, okay, whenever God is calling his anointed, they always go into a wilderness time, okay? And so really what I'm thinking is before the time of Obama, there was a time where God was saying, okay, I am going to build my kingdom. I'm going to restore and rebuild Jerusalem. And so there was a calling happening, but really what happened is that God's people went into the wilderness. Okay. Um, you know, so, and so we said before that, so after the issuing of this decree, there's going to be 7 weeks, which I think could be the time of Obama. The 62 weeks could connect to the time of the two witnesses, because we see that number 6 there, okay, and we see that number 2 there, okay. It will be built again with plaza and moat, even in times of distress. So what we have is Biden returning and rebuilding Obama's kingdom. Okay, then after the 62 weeks, the anointed one will be cut off and have nothing. Okay, so we saw Trump and Netanyahu got cut off. Um, they lost their power. That's a picture of like similar to Nebuchadnezzar, the story of Nebuchadnezzar, his tree being cut down. Because remember, his tree gets cut down to a stump, and this stump has a band of bronze and iron around it. Okay. Um, um, that also could be a picture of America kind of losing their power during Biden. Um, um, but we saw like 62 was January 7th was day 62. I think, I don't remember, like it's 62 days after 11/7 maybe. I don't remember. It's in one of my videos. Okay, and then it says the people of the prince who is to come will destroy the city and the sanctuary. Okay, so what we have is um, Biden right now is destroying America. Um, the the people in Israel in power are destroying Israel with their choices. Okay, um, and then it says, although I don't have any specific examples of that. And then it says, and its end will come with a flood. Okay, so the beast of the sea is going to bring a flood. Okay, and then it says, even to the end there be war. So we saw the war in Ukraine come up. Okay, desolations are determined. Okay, which would be like the birth pangs. Okay, and he will make a firm covenant with the many for 1 week, but in the middle of the week he will put a stop to sacrifice and grain offering. So I actually saw that with the vaccines, um, and I don't remember how that works out, but um, the vaccines ended up kind of fulfilling this concept of in the middle of the week. Okay. Um, but I don't know the details right now. But there could be another um, um, fulfillment of that, maybe connected to the war, that, God's going to make a firm covenant, and in the middle of the week, he's going to put a stop to this. Well, actually, I kind of wonder if this connects to, when Trump comes to make desolate, God's just going to allow it for half of the week, and then he's going to put a stop to that. And then it says on the wing of abominations. So we already see like the war being an abomination, the things that Biden's doing being an abomination, like this Iran deal is an abomination. So it says on the wing of these abominations will come one who makes desolate, so that will be Trump, the eighth king who comes to destruction, goes to destruction. And then that's going to happen even until a complete destruction, one that is decreed, is poured out on the one who makes desolate. Okay, so remember, if you cause destruction, then judgment is you'll be destroyed. Okay, so that's kind of what that's talking about. Okay, so just really quickly, some calendar ideas. What's interesting is, so we're kind of looking for a third day and we're looking for an eighth day. Okay, in 2022. Okay. What's interesting is March 25th is second Adar 22. Okay. That is the third day of the 2-year anniversary of 3/18/2020, which is when the lockdown started. Okay. And the reason why is because you have Adar 1 would be, okay, so the lockdowns happened on Adar 22. Okay, well, we're in a leap year and there's 2 Adars this year. Okay, on the Jewish calendar. Okay, so you could say that the first Adar 22 is the 2-year anniversary of the lockdowns, or you could say the second Adar 22 is the anniversary of the lockdowns. What's interesting in between those two dates is 3/18/2022. Well, that could be the second year anniversary of the lockdowns. So I talked about this in my last video too. So that's fascinating. So that's a third day concept. Okay. But March 25th is also an 8th day because you have Adar 15th to 21 would be days 1 to 7, and then you have Adar 22 is the 8th day. What I thought was very interesting too is that 5782 adds up to 22. Is that not interesting? 5782 is the date on the Hebrew calendar, the year date on the Hebrew calendar. Okay, so fascinating. Okay, and so that started, the year 5782 actually started in, I think Rosh Hashanah was in September. So that would be when the year 5782 started. Okay. What's very interesting to me is March 24th is um, is 9 months, 11 days from Trump's 75th birthday. So that's kind of interesting, because what's interesting is that we saw on the 24th, in the chapter where Daniel talks about mourning for 3 full weeks, on the 24th, he has an angelic encounter on the 24th. Okay. So is that connected to March 24th? I don't know. That's tomorrow, so we'll just see if anything happens. But also, March 24th is also the 30th day from the start of the war. Okay. So Esther mentions 30 days. Okay. 30 days not being able to go to the king, or not being called by the king, or something like that. Okay. So that's kind of interesting. And then, okay, don't forget. Okay, so we talked about the 70th week and the 71st week. But I don't think I mentioned too, there was a pattern in okay, so the 70th week, I don't know if I'm going to remember this pattern, but I told you about how the 70th week, Netanyahu lost power, and then Biden, sorry, Netanyahu lost power, and then Trump got kicked off of Facebook and Twitter. But then there was kind of this pattern in the 71st week. Okay, when would that be? I don't know if I can find the calendar fast enough here when that happened. But there was some kind of pattern in the 71st week, which I was wondering connected to the week that we're in now, the 71st week of Biden. where there was definitely something happening on the seventh day and the eighth day, I think. Um, so, I mean, I guess I'll have to look that up. Maybe I could put a little note in notes about that. But just so you know, I mean, that was kind of interesting too, this pattern that I saw on the 71st week. Okay. But if nothing happens now, we're in the 71st week of Biden. I don't know if something's going to happen on the 24th or the 25th. Um, Possibly. What's interesting too about the 25th is the daylight savings time. I should probably be on this one because I'm still talking about the 25th. Daylight savings time in Israel. Um, let's see, there was something else too. Sorry. Um, um, oh, well, I was wondering about the 25th kind of connects to the date of Christmas. Okay. Oh, but the 25th, I didn't mention this. Oh, no, I did. It's the 2-year anniversary of 318. Okay, so maybe I don't have new information for that. But I was thinking if something doesn't happen this week, then we could look for something that fulfills. I mean, I guess the reason why I was interested in March 25th is that it seemed to be fulfilling both the third day and the eighth day. Um, there was both a third day fulfillment and an eighth day fulfillment. And if you look at the third days in the scripture and the eighth day in the scriptures, they're definitely really significant days. Okay. You know, Jesus rose on the third day. Okay. Um, so that's why we're looking for like a third day and the eighth day. But if it doesn't happen in March, so I haven't really seen a day in April that would kind of fulfill this same concept of the third day and the eighth day. I mean, we do have the eighth day of Passover is April 23rd, so that would be Nisan 22. That is the day we do start, we would count the eighth Omer in the evening of that date. Okay. Um, and then what's interesting though, that Omer, the eighth day of the Omer is April 24th, which is Orthodox Easter. The evening of Easter is the third evening of Passover. That's April 17th. Okay. So I don't know. I mean, you see the 17th, which connects to like the judgment of Babylon, 17 and 18th. I don't know. I'm not sure. So we'll have to see. Maybe, if something doesn't happen this week, I'll sit down and do some calculations to see maybe why April would be a high watch day. I mean, I already talked about this in my last video that obviously Passover and Easter are like, the holidays about, being set free from our slavery to Egypt. And then obviously Easter is the holiday of resurrection, so, um, um, so obviously, you might expect to see, God set us free during Passover, you know. Um, so, but we'll see what happens. Um, so, um, so hopefully you followed that. Hopefully you could see why last year was the year of the beast from the sea, and why maybe this year could be the year of the return of the eighth king, the sixth king that's now the eighth king, or the eighth king being the Messiah. That would be good. Also being an eighth, you know. Um, so so I want you to see that I think we could be fulfilling prophecy. Okay. Obviously we won't know until everything, comes down, because we see in part and we prophesy in part. But these are some patterns that I'm seeing on the calendar. So hopefully that was encouraging to you. And I really thank you for tuning in and listening. I know I can be really detailed and, it could be kind of a chore to listen to my videos, but hopefully you're encouraged. I appreciate my small little audience that I have. I love you guys. I appreciate you for supporting me, and just pray for God's blessing. And I especially pray for God's grace on you guys right now, because I know it's a hard time in the world. Um, I mean, one of the reasons why I was kind of looking at this week, besides all the other things, is that does not it seem like the birth pangs are just getting closer and closer? I mean, we had fires in Texas and tornadoes in Texas and tornadoes in New Orleans, and then we just have this war constantly going on with people getting killed in the Ukraine all the time, and then people fleeing from Ukraine, and and then now supposedly COVID's coming back um, again. I almost like said with a vengeance, well, that's a possibility, um, and there's just a lot going on, and so I definitely think, I mean, it was interesting to me to look at the news over the weekend, because it was like, I think it was Sunday morning, I was looking at the news, and it was like there was a shooting somewhere, and I mean, we had the Japanese plane crash, and there was a guy ran over some people with this car, and there was also that horrific car accident where, 6 high schoolers got killed. Just terrible. So definitely, pray for everyone going through the birth pangs. Pray for God's grace and strength for everyone. Definitely. Oh, and that's the other thing too, is all the people making the mass exodus from Ukraine. Um, also people trying to leave Russia too. Um, definitely pray for God's people, that God will give them the wisdom what to do during these dark, dark times. Pray for God's grace and strength for his followers. Definitely pray for the people in Ukraine that are just under massive persecution. Um, you know, pray that they could get out of there, um, um, so definitely keep the people in Ukraine and just their family members and all the people that are, just uh, fleeing right now, to keep them in your prayers. That God would be with them. Um, so thank you so much for listening. So hang in there. I believe our redemption draws nigh. Remember Jesus said, when you see all these things, look up, for your redemption draws nigh. So hopefully it's close. I mean, one of these days I'm going to say in my video it's close, and maybe I'll be right at that time. you know, um, you know, So I mean, even a monkey, hits the target once in a blue moon, right? so, so we'll see, but just be encouraged. I definitely think we're in the birth pangs. I talked a little bit more about, I definitely see with the war that that's a big part of the fulfillment of the birth pangs. So, and we just, saw war like in that passage of Daniel too. So hang in there. I know times are hard, but just God says to cry out to Him and to ask Him for, strength and grace, and the biggest promise that we can hang on right now is that God is going to hear our prayer at some point and answer it, and so He might be asleep, during the time of the seventh king, but at some point He's going to wake up and do a reversal of fortunes. So be encouraged, okay? So God bless. Thanks for tuning in.